Hello everybody, my name is Ian Glover, I'm President of CREST International and I'd like to welcome you to CRESTCon 2021. This is the 10th running of the CRESTCon in the UK, and since we've started we've also extended this and we now run CRESTCons in Australia, in Southeast Asia, and we have shared events in the United States. So really we are internationalising this whole process. I make an apology that this is another virtual event, that the circumstances are obviously difficult for people, but I hope that the virtual event will actually help us to share more and more of the content that we're providing in the presentations. And I really hope that we're providing a very vibrant and a very useful set of updates in terms of all the different things that are happening within the industry. I would also like to say that we owe a great debt of gratitude to the people that have organised this CRESTCon. It's been very difficult because we've gone from virtual to physical and then back to virtual again. And certainly the Royal College and also the organisers of this event, I think, have done a fantastic job on our behalf to make sure that this event runs. I've gone through all of the presentations and it's going to be a really interesting day. So I would really suggest that you either record or come on to the different presentations throughout the day. And I think you'll get a really good update in terms of what's happening within the industry. In saying that, I would like to do a quick update in terms of some of the activities we've been doing within CREST over the last year in terms of supporting you as a community. We had quite a lot of feedback in terms of a number of things that we thought we should do as an organisation. We conducted a member survey early in 2020, and we've taken on all of the observations and suggestions that people have made, and we've built those in, I hope, to an improved experience for everybody. That includes members, people who sit our examinations, and the wider stakeholder community. In addition to that, we run regular governance reviews, and we ran a governance review to look at the internal processes to make sure they were fit for purpose and to make sure that we are actually structuring and organising the business in an effective way that would both allow the effective management now, but also allowed the growth in a controlled way. All of the recommendations from the governance review have been accepted and have been implemented or in the process of being implemented. We've significantly increased the number of member contribution events, and I'll come on to that when I describe what we've been doing in terms of marketing and PR. But what we've tried to do is to continue the communications, even though we've been in the COVID restrictions. So obviously a lot of this has now gone to virtual events, but it's really given us the opportunity to, I think, broaden the appeal and also broaden the readership in terms of some of these presentations. It's what we wanted to do anyway, so in some ways the COVID situation has helped us in terms of driving this forward, but I very much look forward to having a physical event. We had a physical event in Australia this year. It was slightly smaller in Canberra than we would normally have organised in Australia, but it was really nice to see people getting together, and I strongly hope that we can do that very soon. We've looked at improvements in terms of the level and nature of communications to all of our stakeholders, and again I'll describe what some of those things we've been doing are. But we've also taken on board internal communications teams to support the excellent work that's been done by PRPR on our behalf for all the years that we've been in operation. We've also revised the operational and the international structures. This sounds very boring, but it's very important because it allows structured growth. We're looking at how we're going to restructure Southeast Asia. We have negotiated the position in Australia, so we now understand how we're going to move forward with the structures there. We've already established an international presence within the United States, and Tom Brennan is doing a fantastic job on our behalf to actually move that process forward, and there's some really interesting things happening there. And then what we're doing now is pulling together all of those regions into an international operating board to make sure that we can actually structure and organise the business as a global enterprise, which I think will drive significant improvements and also significant opportunities for our members, as well as improving the level of influence we have within the community. Over this year, we've also made a significant contribution, I believe, to the establishment of the new Cybersecurity Council in the UK. We're yet to see the fruits of all of that labour, but I think it's a good concept. It's certainly something that we would support within CREST, and I think it's something as a member community you should be aware of and should probably have a look at it to make sure that it's going to be fit for purpose, serving your needs for the future. We've also had some issues during the year, and we've looked to update our complaints handling process in line with that. Previously, our complaints processes have been very much orientated to complaints about member organisations from clients, or complaints about examination processes. But obviously some of the issues we've had this year have meant we've had to stand back, think about what that looks like moving forward, because it's a slightly different environment. But again, I wasn't going to go into too much detail of that here, but it's very important, because that gives assurances to the buying community that we're operating on their behalf as well as our members, and that we are providing an excellent service in terms of making sure that the services provided by members and the qualifications held by individuals are fit for purpose. All of those things are designed to allow growth and influence, and I think better support our member and the wider community. I think it's a very small team, but my team is doing, I think, a fantastic job in actually doing that. This is our normal slide that we make as an introduction about what is CREST. And it's very interesting that over the time that we've been running CREST, we haven't changed this significantly. We are an international not-for-profit now, and a true international business. We provide the accreditation of services, and whilst we've increased the number of specific disciplines we consider, the overall process and the overall emphasis behind it hasn't changed significantly. But we now do vulnerability assessment, and we do that in a number of ways, both technical and non-technical, from the accreditation. Obviously, our penetration testing is well known, and we are also providing cybersecurity incident response accreditation services. That's likely to change very slightly in terms of the work we've been doing recently, both again internationally, but more importantly in the UK with the work we've been doing with the NCSC to define what the next tier looks like in terms of organisations fit for purpose that provide incident response services to the community. I think threat intelligence has really come on leaps and bounds in terms of this year, in terms of the way that it's perceived, the way that it's used, and some of the new ideas we have in terms of using innovation and using that threat intelligence to support regulators, governments, and other communities, including supply chain. So I think the move towards threat intelligence has been very significant. Our simulated targeted attack and response, both from the threat intel and from the red teaming perspective, I think is world leading still. We have a huge amount of interest from countries all over the world that want to move towards simulated targeted attack and response. Some of them are not quite mature enough, I don't think, to procure and consume the output from it. But we are working really hard to put in place structures that will allow that to happen, and that level of maturity in those different countries to move forward. Very importantly, we've got SOC services now, and we've moved now towards full audit. So that's both the on-site and off-site audit. We now do that virtually, which is fantastic. And I'll mention again in a little while, but we've done 20 new SOC audits in the last 3 months. This is a huge area of interest. It's a service that's provided by an awful lot of our member companies, and this is a significant way of differentiating those services in the marketplace. We now have more than 250 accredited member organisations across the world, and from a professional certification perspective, we now have 3,500 individuals that hold our qualifications, and interestingly enough, that is now in more than 50 countries. If it wasn't for COVID, I think we would have been close to 4,500 at this point in time. But I think there's a big catch up. So I think we're going to see those numbers increase quite significantly over the next year as we move towards the redelivery of our examination processes. Given that we've now got 250 member organisations, we have built the buyers selection platform, which I'm sure that some of you have seen. It's available from our website, but this is very much to support the buying community in terms of the selection of accredited services, the selection of member organisations that provide access to schemes, and also where those member organisations operate in terms of both region and in terms of country. This is a fantastic resource. Unfortunately, again, due to COVID, and I will stop blaming COVID very quickly, we haven't been able to launch that in quite the way that we'd like to. We would like to make a big song and dance about it, but I think that's given us time to refine this, and this is a really useful tool that I use a lot. And I point both potential buyers of service to it a great deal, and it's now used quite significantly within the regulator community to actually understand a bit more about the marketplace. We have enhancements to this being made. We have improvements that we're going to see for next year in terms of the way we describe the organisations that are represented on this register, and also in terms of the supporting material as well. But if you haven't looked at it, I would suggest you do, and understand how you can best represent yourself and represent your organisations on that service supplier platform. In terms of the company accreditation, we've made what I think are quite significant improvements to the membership portal. It was really good, and again, I think world leading. But we've made some improvements to make it easier for members to provide their information and provide updates. And it's made it easier for us to monitor and manage the process going through the accreditation process. Obviously, as we increase the number of members and we increase the number of services areas and we increase the number of schemes that we directly or indirectly support on behalf of governments and regulators, then that becomes much more complicated. But what we've now done is we've designed it so we can expand those areas within the membership portal to easily cover the schemes. And what we're attempting to do is a one-stop shop. So in other words, if you become a CREST member and you're on those scheme areas, it doesn't cost you any more to move into other disciplines, and it doesn't cost you any more to enter into some of the other schemes. And in addition to that, we obviously open up a significant marketplace for the member organisations. The membership, interesting enough, has continued to increase over the last year, again, quite significantly. It's roughly in line with where we thought it would be. And again, what we're seeing now, as I've mentioned, is a spike in terms of the number of SOCs that are now coming forward to be accredited in various parts of the world. The membership, I think, is a really important benefit to the buying community, because we are therefore providing that access to trusted organisations who are utilising skilled, knowledgeable and competent individuals. And we haven't changed that terminology in all the time that I've been responsible for CREST. And I think it's really the benchmark in terms of what we're doing as an organisation. And I think CREST membership is the benchmark now on an international basis, not just in the UK, in terms of quality of services provided. I believe this results in a much wider audience for our members. I think a lot of our newer members see a significant uptake in terms of the number of inquiries they get through. And for our existing members, I think that maintains their level of exposure in the marketplace. But I think it also helps a much greater level of influence. And also it allows them to expand either into other disciplines or an international marketplace in a very smooth transition. So I think there's lots of really positive things and lots of really positive feedback we get in terms of the accreditation process. And our small team of skilled accreditors run by Samantha, I think, is doing an excellent job on your behalf. And the level of support her team provide in terms of helping organisations mature to a level where they can meet the CREST standards, I think is invaluable within the marketplace. In terms of professional qualifications, this is a really interesting piece of work that we've been doing over 2020 and moving into 2021. We're now moving towards a fully proctored technical assessment examination at our Pearson VUE centres. Up until now, we've run our multiple choice and long form examinations in the Pearson VUE centres, but what we now are capable of doing is running our technical assessments. I'm really excited about this. This is something I've wanted to do for many years. Because it allows the opportunity to expand and the access to more people to our professional level qualifications. The difficulty we've had in the past is if you look at some of the other certification providers and you look at some of the other solutions that are available on the marketplace, it was really difficult to get a level of assurance. Cheating was quite obvious in some areas, and although improvements have been made, I think that there are still some difficulties in terms of particularly some of the remote proctoring and some of the way that we actually, or some of the way that some of the examinations are run. So we are working with Pearson VUE and an organisation called LODS to build a platform on top of the Pearson VUE Centre. This is almost the first time this has been done, and certainly the first time it's been done in Europe. But I believe that it's a really good balance of providing a full proctored service with access to technical examination content with control, and it also provides, I think, the accessibility that we require, and also the level of confidence in terms of how the examinations are run. We've done this with no compromise on the existing examination management practices, and I'm really enthusiastic about how we're going to move forward with this in the future. We've asked questions of Pearson VUE about their centres that are available that can actually run these types of exams. Not all of the Pearson VUE centres are suitable, but they are now available in virtually everywhere in the world, and certainly everywhere in the world where we have a significant presence with our memberships. So this is really going to expand the accessibility in terms of our examinations and make the whole user experience much better. It will also ease the booking process. It will provide faster marking of feedback, and also faster, easier and more traceable examination content update. And I think that's very important, particularly as we work to international standards in terms of the way that we manage the process and the way that we manage the content examination. And overall, I think it will make a significantly improved candidate and member experience. In terms of the examinations, then from a Pearson VUE perspective, we have a registered level penetration testing qualification that's been created and tested. And I'm hoping that by the time we're actually running this virtual event, it will be fully live. So we will have a registered level technical penetration test available, and we've tested that in Southeast Asia, we've tested it in the UK, and we are looking to test it in Australia as well. So all of those things to make sure that accessibility is available to everybody. We are doing that very carefully. And we're making sure that, again, we haven't compromised in any of the security that surrounds the way that the CREST examinations are run. We quickly move on to the certified level red teaming qualification. This is a new qualification. And because we've done so much work in terms of the architecture for the registered level, we believe it's going to be a fairly swift process to move towards full implementation of that red teaming exam. This is really important because it allows accessibility to red teaming to governments and regulators in all parts of the world. And again, I think that very much supports the intelligence-led penetration testing activities that we're working towards. We have also in place a project plan for the remaining penetration testing exams, and our view is that we will replicate some of the areas, but there will be new exams in all of the disciplines in terms of penetration testing onto the new platform. And I'm hoping that we'll get the vast majority of that done in 2021. We've done a lot of work looking at incident response career pathways. I think we were leading the way in terms of looking at incident response teams, but we've had the opportunity with the work we've done previously with the NSA in the United States and also with the NCSC in the UK to really stand back and look at this. And a part-sponsored activity by the NCSC in terms of looking at Tier 2 incident response, I think has really brought to the fore a much better structure in terms of how we're actually going to deliver these types of career pathways for incident responders for the future. In terms of incident response examinations, that development is underway. And again, our intention is to deliver all of those exams through the Pearson VUE centres. And again, they're being designed very much with that in mind. And therefore, I think that the implementation, again, should be quite speedy. And I'm hoping that the vast majority of those will be available again by the end of 2021. I think that the CTIPS group have done a fantastic job looking at threat intelligence as a career pathway. And over 2020, we've now got the full pathway from practitioner through to certified level in threat intelligence. And I think that is a huge achievement from what I thought was a really interesting discipline, but a new discipline. And so, in other words, we've taken a new discipline, we have a career pathway developed, we have examinations to support it, and we're working very closely with our training providers to ensure that training is available that can be delivered to individuals that will help them to move towards those qualifications. A really fantastic thing. I think from a CREST perspective, it's quite interesting that I think looking at the work we've done in terms of the establishment of the new Cybersecurity Council, the disciplines that we're responsible for are very much thought leaders in terms of these career pathways and in terms of looking at the credentials available for the individuals. The threat intelligence examinations have been continually improved through the CTIPS group, and using the focus groups is a model that I'm hoping to adopt for all of the other disciplines. So it's very important to us that we continue to develop and evolve our examinations whilst maintaining our relationship with some of the existing governments and regulator schemes. But I think the establishment of the new focus groups, both in the UK and internationally, will provide a lot more input. And I'd like to thank the people from the Threat Intelligence Group for helping us to establish what that looks like and how we're going to do it for the future. They've also looked at the concept of a foundation level qualification as an introduction to the subject. So this is below our practitioner level examination. It's not going to be viewed as a professional qualification. But in threat intelligence, there wasn't that sort of foundation level, that introduction to the subject. I'm interested, and therefore making people more open to employment. And I think this concept of an introduction of a qualification below our current practitioner is a good thing. We're looking at how we're going to deliver that, but there is an option for that to have that delivered anywhere. So in other words, because we're not actually that worried about the proctoring aspect nor the cheating aspect, we could deliver that in a slightly different way, and we could make it much more open and available to a lot of other people. In terms of examinations, we've made some refinements. I think we've made it much fairer now in terms of the way that the fellowship requirements for CREST are issued. And I think that the CREST fellowship is now becoming recognised in the marketplace as being something that is both tangible and important. I strongly believe, and I was a great advocate of setting up the fellowship in the first place, because it is a recognition of the contribution that somebody's made to the industry through either their examinations or other forms of contribution. But we refined that process, we've made it fairer, and but I think the fellowship is something that everybody within our industry should really aspire to getting. And that feeds very much into the specification for the chartered level status for CREST qualified individuals. I've worked very hard with some of my team to make sure that our certified level people will meet the requirements of the new charter status for cybersecurity within our industry. And I've made sure that's going to be applicable for all disciplines. This is very important. This puts us on the same level as chartered engineers or chartered architects or all of the other aspects in terms of professional industries. And again, I think there's going to be more and more demand for chartered level status for individuals providing certain types of services. We already do things within the financial services in the UK in terms of providing services where investigations are required or mandatory improvements are required. And I think this charter status provides us with the opportunity to do that more and more, and also to have a strong voice of the profession to actually stand up and talk about things in public in a much wider community. So this is really important, and I think both the fellowship and the chartership is really important for the future. It's a meaningful professional development activities for maintaining the charter status. I've never been a great advocate for having professional development points related to attending a conference or attending a training course or something that you don't need to pay any attention to. And so what we've been doing is, obviously in the past, we've made sure that people have resat their examinations and therefore professional development points are not required. But I think for charter status, we might need to put that in place. And we've been looking at the establishment of a meaningful professional development set of activities based on our YouTube channels and based on actual monitoring. And I think we will, again, be quite thought leaders in terms of how that's actually delivered to the community. We've also got a review of the threat intelligence foundation level, as I've said. And if that seems to have a real benefit, we'll look at its applicability to all of the other disciplines that we're responsible for. Support to regulators and governments, we've continued to do that all the way through. It's very interesting that we now provide quite a lot of support to DIT and the Foreign Office on both physical and virtual trade missions. Tracy is going to do a presentation on this particular set of presentations for CRESTCon as an introduction, and she leads the DIT team in terms of cybersecurity. So I really ask you to listen to that presentation with a lot of interest. But we are trying to look at the way that industry can support both DIT and the Foreign Office in terms of trade missions, and therefore open up opportunities for UK companies. And we are trying to do that in all the ways we possibly can. And I think there's going to be some really interesting new things coming out of that this year that I think you should really track. I've just mentioned a couple of our UK schemes. So the CAA Assure scheme has been launched. I still think that is the best version of the assurance for some of the critical national infrastructure that I've seen on a global basis. I think a lot of the concepts that are within the Assure program can be expanded into other areas of critical national infrastructure, and also they can be expanded into supply chain analysis. And we have ideas about how we can improve that, particularly looking at quantitative analysis of organisations that fall under the assurance requirements under Assure. But we think we can expand that again into other areas. We've done quite a lot of work with the PRA and the FCA, looking at the establishment of the STAR-FS process. That has obviously stumbled a little bit because of COVID in terms of its formal launch, but it has given both us and the regulators time to look at this in quite a lot of detail. And I think the new implementation guide and the approach that we're taking in the UK is really thought leadership in this area. And when we're talking to overseas governments and regulators, it's very much the STAR-FS model that we are now purporting as being the most appropriate way for them to deliver their types of services. In the UK, we're also looking at physical penetration testing. This is coming back to the fore, and we're working with the UK CAA, the Cabinet Office, and the National Health Service. We're not saying that we will open new schemes in terms of looking at this, but when we surveyed our members, there was a significant number that were interested and already providing physical penetration testing services. And when we run our initial workshops, we started physical, but then moved to virtual. We had a huge amount of interest from our members. So this is an interesting area to watch. We've done development and support of a number of schemes in different areas. And the process, we think, now is well defined, and also we've implemented it a number of times. So we now understand how we can support a government or a regulator scheme. We understand the difference between those that we own and operate, and those that we have an influence over, and those that are run completely independent of us. But I think we are very much ahead of the game in this, and for our members and for our qualified individuals, this opens up huge opportunities. We've got regulators and governments in virtually every region in which we are operating that are looking to expand the opportunities available within the schemes. And I think over the next year to 18 months, we're going to see an awful lot of developments in those areas. We've conducted a number of industry briefings to regulators and governments. We do that almost on a weekly basis. And there is a huge global interest in the services provided by our member companies, and we can track some of that through the service selection platform. We've done a lot in terms of trying to improve and make more accessible the information and the services that we provide. In 2020, we ran 55 webinars. Incredible. I think PR and my internal team have just done a really fantastic job. The idea of running 55 events in 2020 with all of the disruption that was going on, I think is a magnificent achievement, and I'd like to thank them again on your behalf for all the efforts they put in. We had over 3,800 registrants. We had 2,500 people attending those webinars. And we've had whole days linked to intelligence-led penetration testing, incident response, and threat intelligence. And again, what we'd like to do is to expand that out. These won't replace CRESTCon, but they will augment it, and I think will provide a wider access. Our CREST Advocate YouTube channel has now got more than 1,000 subscribers. We've got hundreds of hours worth of really good content, and we've been working really hard to put those into effective playlists, make them more accessible, and to put in place links and things to make sure they are more visible to a wider community. But if you haven't looked at the CREST Advocate YouTube channel recently, I would really strongly suggest you go away and have a look. It's very different than what it was, and we've got now over 30,000 total views in 2020, 375,000 total impressions. And the other really interesting thing is the total watch time of 1,300 hours. We have a much higher ratio in terms of the amount of time people spend looking at things than most of the other YouTube channels that have large content. We're also continuing to run the Access to Cyber Day, looking at all forms of diversity. And I think we've very much led the way in this in terms of being active. I don't think over 2020, and again, I'll blame COVID for that a little bit, we've been quite as active as I would have liked to have done in terms of tangible things we've done to move forward. But we have done a lot of work, again, considering the gender balance, looking at neurodiversity and looking at stress and burnout. Again, I think that CREST and our community is leading the way on this. And again, putting metrics in place to make sure that we can measure these things are very important. But there's a whole range of community activities we're doing, and I'd really ask you to try to monitor those as much as we possibly can. We will provide additional information about events coming up later on in the day. I thought I'd single out one of the projects that we've been working on. We were very fortunate to get a not insignificant amount from a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to look at the development of ecosystems in 8 countries in Africa and Asia. We developed an international maturity model assessment, which is compatible with some of the wider cybersecurity indexes, international indexes, and also is compatible with the Oxford University cybersecurity maturity model. But we dive down into a greater level of detail, and also we look specifically at some of the things that are provided within our disciplines. We've already done 8 countries, and we now have country reports available for all of those countries that we've assessed. But in addition to that, we have another 3 countries that have asked to be included, and we're now starting to expand that into other areas. And I think the more and more countries we have, the better we'll have in terms of analysis and comparative data. In terms of what's called the CMAGE, it's a maturity model assessment that we've developed. We have 20 research fields per country. We have over 4,000 unique references to external material. It's really invaluable in terms of looking at what is currently available and doing research. There's 36,000 active database entries. We've looked at over 600 financial institutions and identified, and we've looked at that from a quantitative analysis perspective. And again, I would thank the threat intelligence industry for supporting us in that work. We've produced 8 individual country reports, and the relational database is now being populated with all of the material we have. We're going to make as much of that available IPR free and free, and we believe this will be the repository for research material on ecosystems in countries for the future. And we'll also provide metrics to measure improvement. There's a huge amount of interest in terms of what we've been doing in terms of the CMAGE, from organisations as wide a field as the World Bank to specific countries, for example, like Pakistan. It's really interesting that we've managed to look at both quantitative and qualitative analysis in terms of doing this. And I think this is the first time anybody's really done that from a maturity model assessment. So what we're doing is we're looking at the national cybersecurity policies. We're looking at the cybersecurity information sharing platforms and information exchanges. We're looking at the cybersecurity service providers, both in countries and those that are willing to provide services to a country. We've looked at the professional development activities, and we've looked at research and other sources. What we've tied together is that quantitative analysis, initially looking at the banking sector, but again, the work we've done here can be easily expanded out into all of the other areas of the critical national infrastructure, and I believe into supply chain. So this is a real new innovation way of looking at this. This is a passive external viewpoint, and we've looked at up to 100 banks per country that we've done the analysis, and again, I think that assessment will grow. We also combine that obviously with the qualitative analysis. And at the back end of that, what we're doing is we're looking to establish a 5-level maturity model. And for the countries we've done so far, we're trying to move them from a level 2 to a level 3. And the way we're doing that is, as CREST is not a consultancy, we would pass all of the consultancy opportunities onto our member companies. But what we are doing is looking at the availability of centrally provided guidance on an international basis. And we've identified a whole range of areas where there are no central guidance available. So for example, on those first 2, establishing an effective cybercrime unit, there is no document that describes how that can be done. And looking at the PREVENT programme in terms of how to put in place processes to reduce the risk of vulnerable and young people being groomed in cybercrime, there is no document available that describes how to do any of that. We are well progressed in terms of writing those guides, and they're going to be available IPR free and free. But the rest of that, as you can see, there's quite a range of different activities we're doing that I think will support the industry, that has a social responsibility associated with it, and provide, I think, our members, our qualified individuals and other stakeholders with an excellent set of reference material. All of this has been funded by the Gates Foundation, and we've got a huge amount of support and really positive feedback in terms of the work that we're doing. And we have teams in place now for almost all of those activities to be completed. And it's our intention to get the vast majority of those completed and published by the end of 2021. We may slip a little bit, mostly because we are inviting community challenge. And I think the feedback might take a little while, but there's a lot of work being done. And all of these things will be produced this year and be available, as I said, free and IPR free. In summary, we continue to make, I think, improvements in the level of support to provide to the company members, the certified individuals, and all stakeholders. I think we're now at the heart of the major cybersecurity initiatives around the world. We are referenced a great deal in terms of massive initiatives such as the CMMC in the United States. A lot of the concepts that we've come out with in terms of threat intelligence is now used throughout Europe and in many other regions, and is really, I think, being adopted. So even where we're not running these things, the influence we've had to establish them, I think, is significant. And I think that's provided the whole of our community with a strong industry voice, and I think we've continued to have a clear purpose. And I think if you look at the structural stuff that I spoke about at the beginning of this presentation, that will allow for the next stage of development to happen in a controlled way without any reduction in terms of quality of service. And I think we have an exceptional team. I have an exceptional team that's working on your behalf. And I would normally say at a physical event, please take the time to go around, meet them all and say thank you. But as this is virtual, I'd still like you to try and walk around in some form or another and thank them for the efforts they put in. They put a huge amount of effort. They are absolutely committed to CREST and supporting you as a community. And I think they are an exceptional team doing a fantastic job on your behalf. I'd like to thank you, and then really just to invite you to come on to all the rest of the presentations. I've looked at them all, and I think this is just going to be another fantastic day. I think CRESTCon in all of its guises now is really leading in terms of technical presentations and thought leadership presentations. And I think that's only going to extend to the future. I'd now like to hand over to Tracy Buckingham from Department of International Trade. She's going to be talking about the relationship that DIT and the Foreign Office have with CREST, and some of the opportunities that might be available in the future for us to work more collaboratively.